Welcome to Love at the Helms, A World of Shit, Episode 4. Shit doesn't begin as shit. Most of it starts with something understandable. A need, a fear, a desire, a belief, a useful shortcut, an attempt to belong, a way of protecting ourselves, or an answer that once seemed to make sense. Human beings have to simplify an impossibly complicated world just to function in it. We form habits, trust authorities, inherit traditions, join groups, create institutions, and rely on stories that tell us what is happening and what we should do about it. None of that is inherently bad. In fact, we couldn't live without it. The trouble is that these useful constructions can become detached from reality. A belief becomes part of an identity and therefore difficult to question. A rule created for one circumstance survives long after the circumstance has changed. An institution begins protecting itself instead of accomplishing the purpose for which it was created. Fear makes control seem reasonable. Loyalty makes inconvenient facts easier to ignore. Money, status, power, belonging, and certainty create incentives not to look too closely at whatever keeps delivering them. What began as an imperfect answer gradually becomes something we are invested in preserving. This is why being wrong is not the same thing as being full of shit. We're all wrong about things, often without knowing it. Error becomes more serious when we refuse opportunities to recognize and correct it. It moves toward bullshit when truth becomes less important than protecting an identity, advantage, ideology, institution, or desired conclusion. The more evidence we have to ignore, the more people we have to silence, the more contradictions we have to explain away, and the more harm other people must absorb to keep the arrangement intact, the deeper the shit becomes. Groups can make this worse. Families, churches, companies, political movements, professions, governments, and cultures develop shared assumptions about what can be questions, what should remain unspoken, whose experience counts, and who is allowed to define reality. People entering those systems learn what is rewarded and what is punished. Eventually, nobody has to deliberately create the bullshit. The system can reproduce it automatically because everyone has learned how to keep it functioning. That is how ordinary human limitations can become organized shit. An understandable fear becomes a prejudice. A useful tradition becomes dogma. Prudence becomes control. Leadership becomes domination. Success becomes entitlement. Wealth becomes justification for greater extraction. Loyalty becomes dishonesty. Protection becomes exclusion. A temporary solution becomes a permanent bureaucracy. Somewhere along the way, the original purpose gets buried beneath whatever has accumulated around it. Understanding how shit gets made does not excuse the harm it causes. It helps us find where intervention is possible. If we only condemn the final pile, we may feel righteous without changing what keeps producing it. If we can trace the shit back through beliefs, incentives, fears, identities, relationships, and systems, we have a better chance of doing something more useful than simply complaining about the smell.